going to, there we go. So we're on our way. Please, everybody, have your mics muted and your cameras off, except for the presenters. Once we get started, I'll kind of go through and take care of business on this end too. But first, let me welcome you to this Tech Tuesday on autonomous vehicles. I think we said if it walks, drives, flies, crawls, swims, soars into space, you're going to hear a little bit about it today. I'm Dan Bell with the Hampton Roads Innovation Collaborative, the Region's Tech Council. We are an all volunteer organization. We have no full-time personnel or salaries. What we do is for the passion and for the region and to keep the technology agendas flowing within our region. I want to introduce Mr. Barrett Stork from Cox Communications, who's our series sponsor and has been a great partner to HRIC. And Barrett, I'd like to have you say a few words.
Cool, Dan. Thank you so much, folks. I won't keep you too long. Most of you probably heard my commercial before, but just as a reminder, Cox Communications, we are a family-owned, family-operated company. We've been in Hampton Roads for about 40 years, actually a little over 40 years at this point. Over that time, we've invested significantly in our network to make sure we can be providing the services that y'all need, both at home and at your business. Just in the last 10 years or so, we've invested about $2 billion in our fiber operated network here. We do love supporting these events because they are supporting the community. That is one of the things that the Cox family wants to ensure we are doing. We support the communities where we offer our services. So in doing that, we definitely want to support the startup ecosystem. And in that, there's an interesting thing going on. We're actually very involved in the smart cities, smart communities opportunities in the future here. And maybe working with Dan to see if we could talk about that and see how there may be some opportunities for startup businesses in that area as well. But with that, Dan, I will pass it back to you. And if anybody has any questions or ever has any service issues, I'm going to drop my email into the chat box. Please reach out to me. I'm always here to help. I will come and wire and fix things in your house or your business if I have to myself. We want to make sure you all are taken care of. So Dan, thank you again for the opportunity and look forward to hearing the presentation.
Thank you, Barrett. And I know that does not involve adjusting the rabbit ears and holding them in a certain location, because I have done that in the past myself on days gone by. But thank you for everything that Cox does to support our region. And with that, I am going to hand over the program to Kathy Mcgee, who is Director of Research and Innovation for the Virginia Transportation Research Council. And Kathy, that's affiliated with VDOT, I believe, but I'll let you take over the details from there and then introduce your colleagues and panelists. I'm going to go silent and enjoy the program. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me here to moderate this panel. I am Kathy Mcgee, the Director of Research and Innovation at the Virginia Transportation Research Council, and we are the research division of the Virginia Department of Transportation. I also have had a great opportunity in the last couple of years serving as the Director of Innovation for Secretary of Transportation Shannon Valentine. And so in that role, I get to see how innovation can be implemented across all of the modal agencies. And certainly we're going to get to hear about some multimodal approaches to automation today. I don't want to take much time either, because we do have 4 great panelists with us today to talk about the value of autonomous vehicles in air, land, sea, and space. And I don't want to take any time from them. We will have an opportunity after each of the panelists speaks to grill them with questions. So please, if you have questions for any of them, enter them into the chat box, and we will make sure that we come back to those at the end. Each speaker knows that they need to keep their remarks relatively short so that we do have time for questions at the end. So get those questions ready. Our first speaker today is Andy Alden. And Andy is from the Virginia Tech Transportation Institute, a great partner of ours here at VDOT. We do a lot of work with VTTI, and I, in my role, do a lot of work with Andy in particular. He has done a lot of work for us here at VDOT, looking at UAS uses in the surface transportation area. And I think he's going to talk a bit about that today and then go from there as he expands his remarks. So I will turn it over to Andy and take it away.
Thank you, Kathy. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can hear you.
All right, great. And
I
you
can see your slides. Yes.
Oh, great. Okay, thank you. Actually, the primary focus of my talk today will be on the ground automation or highway automation. I do work with UAVs, UAS, but I'm focusing primarily on ground automation today. There's a lot of interesting things going on in the ground domain right now. We've kind of gotten past this point of the Wild West, I would say, with respect to some of the autonomy companies out there that are developing their own systems, and finally getting around to getting realistic about what's possible to do. There was a lot of hype. There's still a lot of hype, but as we're moving forward now, we see kind of reorientation of everything going on. It's fairly interesting. We're seeing it both at the passenger car level. We're seeing it in Detroit. We're seeing it out in Silicon Valley. We're also seeing it across heavy vehicles. People like Daimler with their acquisition of Torque in Virginia, and also with their partnership with Waymo. And then we even have things that are partnerships that are building across, not really across domains, but more across the whole infrastructure chain, the logistics chain in the case of somebody like Neuro, who has acquired the heavy vehicle automation company Ike. And so it's obviously they're positioning themselves to cover more of that logistics chain with the delivery of goods. So most of you are probably familiar with this image. It's the Gartner hype cycle. It's fairly interesting and very applicable to automation in general. I wouldn't really take it upon myself to say where people are exactly in this cycle. I would say that in general, ground automation is either some of folks I think are still stuck in the trough of disillusionment. And I love whoever came up with that term. I think they must have been a fan of The Princess Bride or something. Or up on the slope, the upslope now, on the slope of enlightenment, moving towards a plateau of productivity. I do think there are some winners and losers here, and some areas that are ahead of others, and that's where I have taken the liberty of giving my thoughts on who is kind of leading and who is lagging in this arena. And although from the hype and from what you see on the news, you might think that robotaxis are way ahead, but in reality, what's going on is we see some of these folks that are lagging behind their expectations because they're working because of the type of things they're trying to do. And there's been a lot of money that's been pumped into robotaxis. There's been there's a lot of money and it's been pumped into low-speed autonomous vehicles, especially those that are more the shuttle type with the open cabin, private vehicles, and even urban freight. And some of those I would say are kind of lagging behind expectations is where we think they would be right now. However, on the flip side of that, there's some parts of the industry that are really leading and really moving along well. And that's things like agriculture, obviously mining, on the industry side, and things like port automation and intermodal automation, freight on the highway, especially like exit to exit type automation for heavy vehicles is really moving forward fast. And even in the military realm, there's been a really big recognition that automation can help, especially in roles where it's really a danger to the military staff. And so there's this going on, and there's pretty good reasons behind why these guys are lagging. There's a lot of hype and public exposure in this side. They work in very complex operating environments. There's a higher risk of personal, corporate liability and potential for bad PR. There's also safety issues when you're looking at mixed traffic and things that go on when you have a variety of different types of vehicles, pedestrians, cyclists, and so forth. And then anytime where you involve humans, that really makes things very complex, especially with respect to automation. On the leading edge, we're looking at better defined value propositions. There's a clear, advantage to automation financially, and safety and other areas. It's more predictable operating environments, particularly even military. I would probably say, in my opinion, that even a military battleground is less complex than a busy urban environment. It's less visible to the public, and there's less human-based variability. You might have soldiers on the battlefield, and you may have civilians, but in general, there's may not be quite the variety of different types of people working in that area. And so we're kind of seeing these things shake out according to the complexity of the environments that they're working in. There's an interesting link between automated vehicles and electrification. We're seeing this as part of a larger industry trend where a lot of the major automakers are making major commitments to convert to electric vehicles in the future, some as soon as 2030. There's some good reasons for that. There's a link with AVs. So one of those is automated fueling is a lot more likely to occur with electric vehicles. And if you have robo-taxis running around, you don't want to have to take them. Don't have to involve a human just to fill up the vehicle. It'd be much better if you could do some sort of electrical charging without the involvement of a human. So that's one area. The vehicles are always on and ready to go. The HVAC, the interior can be conditioned so that if a vehicle needs to go do something, it's already taken care of and ready to go. And there's also the potential for vehicles that are always on to actually, even when they're not transporting somebody around, they can act as data or with sensors, mobile sensors, or they can act as communication nodes. And so there's some really interesting things partner with electrification. This just out, and I in particular was really interested in this with the pipeline shutdown we had, and the fact that my wife actually drives an electric vehicle. This is the price of basically electricity versus the price of fossil fuels on what's called an e-gallon basis. And in Virginia, the amount of fuel equivalent that it would take you in electricity will cost you about $1. Whereas the price of a gallon of fuel, as you know, is $2.50 plus, depending upon where you are in Virginia. There are also some downsides with electrification, and that is the power of some of the modern automation systems in cars, automatic driving systems. The power they draw from the vehicle is immense. Computational, sensors, illumination, other different types of things. And so it's actually a hardship on electric vehicles to have high-level automation on board because of that. And so it can diminish the range of those vehicles. And one of the reasons I really wanted to put this slide in here is I saw a presentation 2 weeks ago from a guy named Nelder at Rocky Mountain Institute at the Envision Conference. And he gave an example of what preparation needs to occur at the grid to enable electric vehicles. And I thought this was really interesting. He said, you looked at a power plaza in Minnesota, a travel plaza, had 10 diesel pumps, 16 gasoline pumps. And the amount of power that station actually transferred to the vehicles that passed through was 182 megawatts of power, that is 190% of the capacity of the local electrical grid which services that plaza. So as you can see in that example, there's no way they could totally electrify the operations of that travel plaza. So we face some real challenges going forward with electrification. Other types of challenges to automated vehicles. Weather is a big one. There's a good reason why a lot of the autonomous vehicle testing that's done by Waymo and others is being done in places like Arizona, in Phoenix, Arizona in particular, where the weather is very good. You have.
Hey, Andy, can I interrupt for just a minute? If everyone could mute their microphones, that would be really helpful. We have some open mics that are creating some background noise. Thank you.
Thanks, Kathy. As far as weather, the weather can affect the vehicles. It can cover the sensors and cause problems there. It can obfuscate things like traffic signals. Many of these cars still use a visual camera to look at signals to tell what the signal phase and timing is. And if your traffic signal is covered in snow and ice like this one here, then the car is not going to function well. And just the roadway. And then things like if you have smoke and fog, and the system at some point decides that it can no longer function properly, how do you safely transition the operation of the vehicle back to the human driver? Are they ready to take over? how can you know they're ready to take over? And those are all tough problems. Mixed traffic is very much a problem. We found that out when we actually had a low-speed autonomous vehicle operating at VTTI along a service road with a speed limit of only 25 miles an hour. Most of the traffic went 30, but per NHTSA, we were only allowed to operate at 16 miles per hour because we want to ensure the safety of the people inside this open cabin automated vehicle like this one. Well, that's still a fairly big, 15 miles an hour is still a fairly big speed differential, and it causes a lot of problems. The mixed traffic environment is also very complex with all the different modes of transportation that we have nowadays, everything from scooters, skateboards, e-bikes, all the way up to heavy vehicles. And so that's real tough. Communication is also a challenge. Our spectrum has been cut back by about half at the 5.9 gigahertz level. The FCC took a portion of that and made it available to unlicensed users for things like Wi-Fi. And so we have less available for things like DSRC and cellular V2X. And so that's a challenge. We have problems with, or challenges with respect to the quality of communication also, in that we need high bandwidth, high speed with very low latencies, especially if we're going to do things like remote piloting, which is one of those things that's really needed in cases like highway automation for trucks and freight, and also the local automation for things like the low-speed autonomous vehicles. Human factors are always an issue. We have things that occur inside the vehicle. We see every day where some Tesla driver falls asleep at the wheels or driving along the highway and somebody gets a video of it. That's just one example of that type of problem. We also have abuse that occur outside the vehicle. I think we're going to find as we have more and more of these vehicles operating in an environment with pedestrians, that there's going to be people that are jumping out or intentionally trying to engage the emergency stop systems on these vehicles. And we've seen this occur. And I'll tell you, even on vehicles like the one we were operating like this, the VTTI, the emergency stop can be pretty abrupt. And if somebody's not prepared for it, they can get injured. We have issues with positioning related to GPS, GNSS, urban canyon effects. There's some interesting develops now. The Apple AirTag has come out that it actually uses something called ultra wideband spectrum, which is very good for getting things like positioning at much more accurate levels than we can typically get with GPS. We also have an issue both with aerial systems and ground systems now with this concept of last yard connectivity. This is kind of the next level of last mile connectivity, where even if you get something from a drone to the yard or from a ground-based delivery system to the curb, how do you get this object to the people that might be in the house that may not be able to go outside? My mother-in-law is a perfect example of that. She feels unsafe going outside. And then the edge case scenarios. This is trying to teach machines to expect the unexpected, and it's very tough. This is my final two slides are on this. This is a recent occurrence in Chandler, Arizona, where this is a Waymo vehicle. And there's a poor guy on board this, and he's blogging the whole thing, And this car basically encounters, and we're looking at a very straightforward street scenario, straight lanes. This is not complex traffic. The lighting's very good. The lane lines are very discreet and recognizable. The only thing that's abnormal about this at all is there are traffic cones down the lane lines. And for whatever reason, this trips up the Waymo vehicle and it comes to a stop, half in one lane and half in the other, and basically sits there. And you can't read it, but this little note down here says that our roadside assistant team is 5 minutes away. So basically this passenger sitting here blocking the roadway in this automated vehicle for at least 5 minutes until somebody shows up, jumps in the car, and actually gets it going and drives away again. So these are the kind of things we face going forward. And that's all I have, Kathy, for now.
Thanks, Andy. That was great. And I think you did a good job covering the ground side of automated vehicles. We appreciate it. I guess I will ask Michael Fry if he has been able to return to his office yet. Okay.
Yes, I am. Sorry.
All right. Well, very good. Well, we'll jump to you then.
2 minutes ago.
All right. So for those of you who didn't hear, poor Mike got pulled out of his office for a fire alarm, but he's a good nut, and he's back inside and ready to go. He's currently the program director for undersea oh goodness, C5 ISR Systems at L3 Harris, and a managing partner of Michael Fry Defense LLC, a maritime defense and autonomous systems consulting company. And he's going to talk to us this morning about the marine side of automated and autonomous vehicles. Are you prepared to run your own slides, Mike, or would you like me to run them for you?
If you wouldn't mind running them, might be
All right.
simpler.
All right, let's see if I can do that without creating a...
Oh, I can do it. It's just,
No, let's see. All right, y'all tell me what you see.
there you go.
All right, well, you take it away and just tell me when you want me to change slides.
Okay, as Kathy noted, I'm Mike Fry, and I've spent about 30 years in the unmanned maritime systems arena, starting with the design of the world's largest unmanned undersea vehicle, the LSV, a large-scale vehicle Cutthroat, and that's actually a more of a quarter-scale submarine of a Virginia-class submarine, and it operates autonomously in the lake in North Idaho. Then my next vehicle was a 7.5-inch vehicle, go figure. So I went from 10 feet in diameter to 7.5 inches in diameter. And I've been off and on working or integrating vehicles for many, many years. As Kathy said, I am currently the director of undersea C5 ISR programs for L3 Harris, but I'm speaking today not on behalf of L3 Harris, but on my own. These are my thoughts, my slides. And so don't blame them if you don't like it. Okay, if you go to the next slide, Kathy. So I'm going to kind of walk through a little bit of what unmanned maritime systems are. And I say that because people picture the deadly undersea drones or maybe an unmanned surface vessel that could be used for harbor piloting, but it's actually a much broader domain that encompasses both air, surface mobile, surface fixed, undersea distributed systems, as well as UUVs. In my past, when I was at Newport News Shipbuilding, we were investing in unmanned systems, and I had one of our technology development directors said, you know, unmanned, this is a new technology. UUVs are a new technology. I said, no, they're not. And he goes, they're new to us. And I said, no, they're really not. An unmanned undersea vehicle sunk to Lusitania. So if you think about it in basic terms, a torpedo is an unmanned undersea vehicle. So it's not like they're scary things that are just evolving. They've been around for a long, long time, and to various degrees of autonomy. So I'm going to kind of walk through that. Some of the key technology enablers, like Andy was just talking about, it's very important, particularly if you're very forward deployed and have very limited access to line of sight or to communications, where you have to operate autonomously for long periods of time, unattached. And then I'm going to show you a unmanned maritime system operational example that goes through the air, space, water assets, and then how maritime systems are interoperable with manned, unmanned teaming, because unmanned systems, just like in the terrestrial domain, can be a support to an extra tool for the manned assets. Okay, Kathy, if you go to the next one. So a lot of people equate, like I said, unmanned vehicles to unmanned undersea vehicles or to just unmanned surface vehicles, but it's really a broad spectrum of platforms, anywhere from the aerial platforms like the Fire Scout MQ-8C over there in B to a large displacement UUV that you see, an XL, extra large UUV, excuse me, and even hull crawlers and surf zone seabed crawlers. And for anybody that's, since you're in Hampton Roads, I did a pitch for Congresswoman Lauria a couple of years ago on seabed crawling to clear unexploded ordnance off the Pocosin. as a potential for doing that. There was no funding. It was a unsolicited pitch on my part. So there are lots of different types of unmanned systems. And I put down what are some of the mission areas that each of those unmanned systems employs. So I'm not going to beat these to death, but intelligent preparation of the operating environment means that you go in and you check to be sure that the area is clear, that there's no nets, there's no entrapments of any type, mine countermeasures. A lot of those types of things are done by UUVs, where USVs really work well in an ISR, electronic warfare, and anti-submarine warfare. The UAVs give you global ISR and comms relay from the seabed to the satellite. Hull crawlers can do hull surveys, non-destructive testing without having to dry dock a ship. I actually did a hull crawler a few years ago, working with the Department of Energy to inspect nuclear waste tanks. So they inspect the welds inside the tanks, because they could do it remotely, autonomously, without having humans in the loop when you have radioactive material in the tanks. And the distributed systems, and I'll have pictures of that later, are things like subsea charging, communication gateways, buoys to offload data or to provide remote charging. So this big, broad areas that unmanned maritime systems service. One of the things that I put here, though, there's not a large commercial market today. And a lot of that is just because of cost, because it's autonomy is not inexpensive, and you're putting things out there to go operate independently of human intervention. There are several, but they're typically one or two off for either commercial, academic, or research applications, and not a large market where the Mark 18, the knife fit, well, Mark 18 that you see on the screen has hundreds of those that are out in the water today marketed. And the same thing with the subsea glider. That Slocum glider by Teledyne is there's they've delivered 5 years ago. I was up there and they had delivered like 300 of those so far. So a lot of those are used for facilitating bathymetric surveys and other hydrographic imaging. Okay, if we go to slide 4. So these are the key technology enablers. And there was an admiral who was he's now an admiral. He was a captain then at the stand-up of the Navy's UUV squadron. And these were his 5 tenets. And they've kept going, because these were the hard barriers that you have to have to enable unmanned systems. So endurance, obviously, you want safe and long duration endurance. It's very important to get as high energy density and efficiency as possible. Autonomy and precision navigation, and that's both surface and subsurface and aerial. You have to know where you are, and you have to be able to operate without a man in the loop in most cases. So I'm going to take an unmanned, an XL UUV, the Orca program, and send that out to sea from a pier for weeks, months at a time. So you have to have very little drift in the navigation. You have to get a nav fix every now and then to reorient yourself. So it's autonomy, and it borders on AI. So these vessels have to be able to, as Andy said, with the following traffic rules, you have the collision regulations. So how does these operate with manned platforms? What are the rules of the road? How do you avoid collisions? Do you go port? Do you go starboard? If you're an unmanned undersea vehicle, I encounter a fishing net. What do I do? Do I go around it, cut through it, just back up? There are lots of different decision-making in the autonomy. C3 is pretty straightforward, command, control, and communications. You need to be able to launch, retrieve, and offload data. the payloads and sensors, you have to have low power and high resolution because you want to offload the data and constantly increasing capability without using as much power, because all these things have to balance also. So if I'm using a lot of power for, say, a sonar system, I'm cutting down on my endurance. So you have to balance. So low power sensors are very, very important. And then how do you integrate back to a platform? Whether that platform's a surface ship, whether it's a submarine, whether it's a support ship just to offload data at some points during a mission set, or to recharge. So you have to be able to interact with the host platform of some type. And then we were talking last week, week before last, David was going to talk a little bit about autonomy, and we were talking about cyber on a conversation, and cyber resilience is very, very important. And when we were having our conversation 2 weeks ago, we were right in the midst of the pipeline issue. and I said, cyber resilience is cyber protection as well as protection of your data. So it goes across. So it's not only protecting your infrastructure, your platform, but it's also protecting your data, and to be sure that nobody else has tampered with your vehicle as you send it out. Because I'm sending this thing out, I may or may not have any human intervention for days, weeks, months. I'm getting it back. How do I know that somebody hasn't tampered with it and done some not nice things with the vehicle? So if we go to 5, Kathy. So this is where I'm talking about the whole unmanned system operation. So you see the outpost. This was a public release slide that came from a friend of mine, Captain Jeff Hoyle, who works for Scalable Network Solutions out in San Diego. But this outpost was actually an O&R program for data exfiltration and recharging of a vehicle subsea. But you can see in this example, there are many UUVs that are operating in the area. We've got buoys we have to the left, lower left. You see that there's a sensor that's sending data to the UUV on the other side. We have the outpost in this case is wired. It could be wireless communication using optical or acoustic sensing. You have another UUV on the other side doing a bottom survey. So all of these things are working together with the surface data mine, as well as the offloading the data back to the satellite or to associated ships. On the next slide, slide 6, I just want to show very briefly on how manned and unmanned teaming will work. So it's the next one, Kathy, please. So this is, I'm showing an entire maritime system interoperability. So what can we do with large and small and medium UUVs to enhance the subsea mission in this case, for a battle space? And you just see that we have offloaded data through both manned and unmanned aircraft that's coming from the subsea assets. We have unmanned surface vessels that are searching for mines, looking for with sonar. We have CERTAS vehicles also looking for subsea assets. So we have our allied submarines. We have communication gateways that the UUVs facilitate. We have distributed netted sensors. So the point is, unmanned does not mean that they're out there alone. That unmanned can be a method of enhancing the manned missions through manned and unmanned teaming. Again, and the last one, this is the get off the stage very quickly slide, is that was a very quick overview. I've done these presentations before on an hour just discussing these things. So it was a very, very quick brief. The current investment and this is US and abroad, in platforms, and I mentioned it before, is really on the government-centric funding. So it's not just in the US. There are some, there are lots of commercial vehicles out there, but again, they're onesie, twosie type acquisitions and universities. I recently was working a DARPA program and was using a Slocum glider, the Teledyne glider that was owned by Rutgers University in New Jersey. And we were integrating sensors on their platform for doing some testing, subsea testing. So they're out there, but it's just not huge numbers. The large numbers of acquisition are in the US, and there's a great within the Five Eyes, which are the former British Crown countries. Within those Five Eyes, there's a growing market in unmanned systems. And then I mentioned cyber resilience. It's just very, very important across the entire spectrum, whether it's aerial, surface, or subsea, and the distributed netted systems. So with that.
Thanks, Mike. That was a great description of where we stand underwater, or that didn't come out right, but thank you very much. That was really good.
At least I got back in and I wasn't underwater from the fire department.
That's right. All right. So next up we have Peter Bale. Pete has been involved in the UAS industry for 22 of his 34-year career in the aviation sector. His background is as an electrical engineer and as an aviator, led him onto the path of technology and unmanned aviation. He's worked with industrial leaders like Textron Boeing, Lockheed Martin L3, and various small startups in the UAS industry that have gone on to be acquired by much larger organizations. He is a past chairman of AUVSI at the national level and continues to serve on the RoboNation board. So I think he is in a position to do a great job of describing the role of unmanned systems in the air. So take it away, Pete. Thank you.
Hey, Kathy, and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for the intro. Nice to meet you all virtually. Hopefully, soon enough, we'll be able to all get together and partake in a conference or two here. So AUVSI in August is looking good, apparently. So I hope to see you all there and get some interaction and some great minds thinking alike about where this unmanned sector is going. So firstly, I just wanted to probably dovetail onto Mr. Fry's comments there about, the autonomous systems and culminating together. We had the privilege of working with Dave Bowles, who's the next speaker, with ODU and the visa program. And Mike, this was not where I was going to go to start with, but we did a demonstration here of actually a shipborne communications node, an airborne communications node, and a ground node here at the Wallops facility for the US Navy. It was the visa program. And we were able to stream encrypted high rate video and data from 85 nautical miles to 90 miles offshore, to the Surface Combat Systems Center here at Wallops. So we used a manned aircraft, but the surrogate plan, moving forward is that would be an autonomous vehicle out there, that would be, on station for several days at a time as an overwatch, streaming live data, etc., for the Navy for fire support missions and even for sea squats on the East Coast here as they integrate with the mission here out of Wallops for the Navy. So interesting to note, where the unmanned, camaraderie is starting to come together in all four domains. And I think the baseline for us in the industry is noting that, the robot is the sexy part, okay, whether it's air, land, sea, ground, underwater. It's the backbone architecture that's the same the cross-core technologies that I think is the exciting part for workforce development and the different pieces. And I'll touch a little bit on those as we talk about that. So, good things happening around the Eastern Shore. We've had a lot of success with different UAS programs. And exactly, what we did with Dave's group, showing how you can, migrate those technologies into, all four domains as we look at air, land, sea, and space. It's been interesting to note some of the FAA changes that are coming with, or the new regulatory environment with Part 107. So we're now seeing, the allowance of night flying without, waivers. We're seeing the ability to fly over people. And then I think the next thing that we'll see will be a lot more leniency in the beyond line of sight stuff, which is something that, I've had inherent interest ever since I started flying out of the flight facility here. And other places, we used iridium on a number of occasions. So we would be several hundred miles offshore, beyond line of sight, operating, 200-300 feet above the ocean, gathering, real-time data. And it's interesting to see now, 15 years later or 14 years later, that the FAA is starting to embrace that. And I'm sure that folks like that are on the call that I can see, like Drew and others, are very interested in where those next tenants go within the FAA and how we do it collectively as a community safely and show that it can be done reliably at multiple levels. And where does the other parts of the domains, kick in there? I think that that's going to be extremely interesting. And as well as when 5G, comes online properly, I think there's going to be a lot of use there in the UAS side of the house. Sort of leads me to the next thing, which is we're seeing a lot of change in the. I noticed the first presenter talking about robo taxis, etc. The next piece I see, and everyone's watching it closely, is this this urban air mobility, the air taxi market. 500 billion. Looking at some of the numbers out there. Saw some charts on an Aviation Week program a couple of weeks ago. There's about 119 real players out there in the area at the moment. So they're popping up at a rate of at least a couple of months and being heavily funded from venture capital and folks interested in getting into that. And I think that we're, as the UAS industry, we're leaning heavily on the automobile industry, to figure out that battery technology and that reliability factor in electric motors and different things. So I think both industries are going to feed off each other heavily here as we, get further and further down into this autonomous arena of air taxis. I don't know whether, I would be comfortable hopping in an air taxi at the moment, if it was fully autonomous. But I think our younger generations will acclimate to this very quickly and see it as a normal way of life. And I think that, as we're speaking about that, it leads me into the UAM opportunities and what's out there. So you're seeing that DOD and federal facilities are becoming much tighter on restrictions about certain types of drone operations and certifications required. And I think that the interesting thing for the industry and what we need to watch here in the US is that the stranglehold on the regulatory environment doesn't force this industry, offshore. and I speak openly, and you can look at the, the different blogs and everything like that, like Whisk Aviation. They're a heavily funded part of the Boeing, community, and Whisk has taken most of their operations across the way to New Zealand. Because of the friendly CAA or their civil airworthiness, organization environment to that sort of testing and validation. But in saying that, I think that Virginia is poised in a unique opportunity with a number of regional, quiet airports that can be used strategically to attract large investments to the Commonwealth and the areas to to facilitate this air taxi environment that we're moving into. So with the caution of the FAA. And how long it could take comes an air of opportunity if we can capture some of those folks, like the ones that are operating out on the West Coast and down in the Silicon Valley areas to come and test in a reliable and friendly environment here on the East Coast. So that's, there's some of the things that I see coming across the way. Watching a lot of innovation in different platforms, watching a lot of the acquisition processes change in DoD towards UAS and automation. It's been wonderful to watch, Secretary Gertz when he was in there for AT. And changing the acquisition process, and now he's acting, Secretary of the Navy, continues to push, those reforms on acquisition, allowing, small companies through OTAs and other, accessible, non-traditional contract vehicles to play in the renovation, I call it, of innovation. That seems to have at some stages slowed when you're not able to access those funds easily through the DARPAs and the other organisations. It was interesting also to look at the first presenters problematics with bandwidth. I think that's going to be a major hurdle for all of our industries as spectrum starts to dry up, and what does that look like at the ultimate end of the day. And then finally, I think the other thing just to quickly touch on was what Mike spoke about, was this information assurance, this cybersecurity issue that we have. It's been remarkable to watch the industry, come full circle about just how sensitive the data is coming off these vehicles, and what it can be used against if it's not, in an information assurance environment, and the cyber, pieces that go with it. So I don't want to hold anyone else up unless there's any questions at the end, but I think that the Commonwealth is in a very good position in the air taxi and the environment with UAS. It's been great to work and see the legislative environment look at some of the incentives and hold back some of the language to deter certain things that would detract from Virginia staying in front. And then it's just great to learn about, the four domains, coming together, and because it's really exciting. And as I say, that common core background and architecture is what our next generation, I believe, can be trained easily on, and then diversify their portfolio into these domains and cross-pollinate, from space, air, land and sea, and make it a very robust, autonomous environment, because they'll know all of the operating parameters, in these areas. So that's, that's the best I can do on a 10-second podcast for you, but I hope that gives some insight. I've been waiting, as Kathy said, 22 years for this unmanned evolution to evolve. And I finally think that we're at the cusp of greatness here in the US and especially at the Commonwealth level. So thanks for your time. Thank
you, Pete. That was great. What a great overview. And I like the fact that you left us on a hopeful note. So thank you very much. Our final speaker, and it's always hard to be the final speaker, is David Bowles, who is the first executive director of the recently established Virginia Institute for Spaceflight and Autonomy, or VSAD, that I think one of our other speakers referred to, at Old Dominion University. I am not going to go any further with his bio to preserve time for his talk, so I will turn it over to Dave, and thank you very much.
All right, thanks, Kathy. Hopefully everybody can hear me, and let me go to full screen here.
We can hear you and we can see your slides, so thank you very much.
All right, no, great, and it's what a great set of speakers today. So just really privileged to be on the panel here. We've heard a lot of great things. Like Kathy just said, Peter ended on kind of a high note, so I'll try to continue that. I don't want to bring anybody down as we wrap things up here. But let me go. Let's see. So let me give a quick overview of what VISA is. It is a relatively new organization, Virginia Institute for Spaceflight and Autonomy at Old Dominion University. I won't read all the words. Our tagline is igniting growth, talent, and innovation. And I'm located on the Eastern Shore, and we're really charted to kind of grow that entrepreneurial ecosystem for spaceflight and autonomy. And to continue the optimistic high note, the Commonwealth, especially Southeast Virginia and the Eastern Shore, we are so blessed with so many unique world-class assets when it comes to aerospace. I see some pictures, I've got some pictures along the bottom there, but we have 2 NASA facilities, NASA Langley Research Center in Hampton, Wallops Flight Facility on the Eastern Shore, one of 4 launch pads in the US that can launch to orbit, unmanned systems runway over there. Other great unmanned systems assets, a great industry ecosystem. The maritime industry in Hampton Roads, there's so many applications for autonomous systems in the maritime ecosystem. A growing offshore wind ecosystem off Virginia Beach, and I think the connections with autonomous systems and the offshore wind industry is another great plus for the Commonwealth. So I am really excited about the opportunities. We talk about land, air, sea, and space, and I'm going to add a 5th one here. I don't really see a lot of division between those. If I look at the applications of autonomous systems, I think there's lots of times the application or the solution will be multimodal. You look at a lot of applications. So, and as Peter said, there's some cross-cutting underlying technologies, for lack of a better word, that cut across all of these things. So I am excited. I think the future is very bright. I think the Commonwealth is very well positioned to be a player in this. Kathy kind of keyed me up, said I was going to talk about space. I'm kind of going to talk about that, but I'm going to talk about some other things too. So we'll see how it goes, and I'll try to keep it short. So just quickly, some current activities we got going on. We do have a partnership with the Unmanned Systems Center at CIT. That's Commonwealth Center for Innovative Technology. Tracy Tynan, if you're involved in autonomous systems, you know Tracy. We've developed an MOU with Tracy, and with her help, we're leading development of what we're calling a strategic playbook for Southeast Virginia that'll be consistent with other assets in the Virginia and her strategic plan, and really help ensure Virginia remain a leader in autonomous systems. We've just gotten started with that. I will say one of the first things we have coming out of the gate is looking at port safety and security, and how can autonomous systems play into port safety and security. Actually, Sean Talmadge up in Richmond, the Deputy Secretary for Public Safety and Homeland Security for the state, is the sponsor of that, and we're working with the Center for Naval Analysis to help with that. We've got a workshop bringing users of the port in to really understand what the pinch points are and where autonomous systems can help out, and then we'll have an industry day aimed at the end of July to come in and say, okay, hey, here's the problems. Let's get industry and the innovators in the room to figure out how to solve those things. So be on the lookout for that. More to come very, very soon on how we're those two workshops. We've also got a great partnership with Virginia Space and Mars. As I said, we have a very unique asset here in the state where we can launch to orbit. We send cargo to the International Space Station on Northrop Grumman's Antares rocket and the Cygnus cargo vehicle. There is CubeSat space on that Antares second stage, and Dale Nash, the CEO of Virginia Space, has asked Visa to lead the next CubeSat mission targeted for summer of 2022. So I'm excited about that. That's a great opportunity, and I think that can lead to what I envision for the Eastern Shore and the state is a much more routine, robust CubeSat, smallsat program with multiple launch providers. You know, right now, Northrop Grumman and the Antares vehicle launches to the International Space Station. Rocket Lab from New Zealand as a new entrant. Their Electron rocket's probably going to launch later this year. The launch pad is already completed. They're just working out some final details. Very exciting though. Rocket Lab announced the development of a new, much larger rocket targeted for operation in 2024. And we hope that will be launching from Wallops, and we hope there's other opportunities to do other things with Rocket Lab over there. So we're in the middle of that, and I think that will just help grow this whole ecosystem. When we talk about, and I talked about, you know, there's in my mind, you know, I don't draw hard lines between air, land, sea, and space. You know, on the space side, there's a great kind of example of remotely operated, human in the loop on autonomous activities going on right now on Mars. How cool is that with Mars 2020? And you got a rover and you got a helicopter flying around. So pretty cool stuff. And again, as multiple people have said, there's some common technologies that run through all those themes. And as we move out into space, you're going to see more and more things actually assembled in space autonomously, manufactured in space autonomously. So I'm very excited about that. The thing that ties a lot of this thing together, and I want to talk about last, is this Virginia SmallSat Data Consortium and what we're calling Virginia's Open Data Cube. So we co-lead that with Virginia Tech, NASA, and Analytical Mechanics and Associates. And it's really looking at a way to take, starting with satellite data, open source satellite data, most of it from Landsat, but then combining it with other data sets, other satellite data sets, drone data, data from numerous sources, traffic cameras, water sensors out in the ocean, but getting it in a platform that's easily accessible and usable, and to taking that data and turning it into useful information, really connecting problem owners with solution providers. And one of our partners in that is MITRE Corporation. So let me go to the next slide. And so there's what's called the MITRE Space Initiative, the UIX, University Innovation Exchange. And so we've used this data cube as kind of an underlying format, if you will, for looking at some critical public use cases in the Commonwealth, like flooding prediction, river health, transportation, solar power efficiency, wildfires. You can see the 4 universities plus the Virginia Space Grant Consortium involved in this. We had a series of workshops over the summer to understand what's being done now, what needs to be done to improve outcomes, and how can we leverage these opportunities. Next steps, we're looking at ways to get some pilot projects funded. I know we're looking at ODU led the flooding prediction and response. UVA was working with the transportation problem. Kathy and Kathy Mcgee was actually involved with that, so she might know more about the status on that one. So again, I know we're just about out of time, and I want to leave some time for questions. So I'm done. There's my contact info, and what a great panel. It was my pleasure to be part of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Again, 4 great presentations on unmanned systems across the different domains. I'm going to ask Dan, I think, how much leeway we have to take questions. I know we're straight up 1 o'clock now. Actually, we're a little past 1 o'clock. And there were a couple of questions that came in through the chat box that I have captured if we don't have time for them. But Dan, can you weigh in?
Yes,
How are we doing?
we're fine. We can run a little bit long for these additional questions if it's okay with you.
Okay, great. All right. So the first question actually was for Peter. So I'll cue him up there, get him ready. And it says, and I don't know what all of these acronyms are, so if I mess them up, please forgive me. How do you see the FAA evolving in terms of sense and avoid? Air Combat Command has been watching NASA and the National Guard Bureau working with packages combining ABD-B, TCAS, and an active sensor, but this seems cost prohibitive. Any insight? So Pete, that's for you.
Okay, so yeah, sense and avoid, or miss and don't crash, as we call it in the industry, has been one of those things that has evolved. I think, forever. And to the person's point, ADSB, TCAS, etc. It still doesn't meet the requirements of that sense and avoid from the unmanned sector side of it. I think that they are leaning. The FAA is leaning on the UAS industry to solve that problem, which will make all aviation so much safer. So I think that there is, much like how the automotive industry had to solve the collision impact statements issued by the various safety requirements which introduced airbags and different things into the vehicles. I think that the UAS industry is being looked on to solve a much bigger problem set, that spreads across not only UAS, but general aviation as a whole. So it doesn't really answer the question. I've been watching it for years. It is very cost prohibitive. But some of the technologies that are being demonstrated in other areas with ground-based radar and different things like that are giving us the stepping stones to doing that. So unable to answer it directly, but I think it's a bigger problem for aviation in general that we have to solve, and I think that's going to be a collective department for both GA and the UAS sector.
Thank you. That was great. The next question in the chat actually came from Marco Rubin, who apparently had to drop off for another meeting when we did run long, but I think it's a good question. And so I want to just lay it out there and then open it up to anybody who wants to respond. And his question is there any value to develop a common model to generalize the definition of autonomy across all discussion areas today, land, sea, air, and space? A generalized, flexible framework done in such a way to also include commercial applications, but enhance future intermodal relationships between land, air, and sea in the future, presuming they're not silos. Anyone want to comment on that?
Yeah, Kathy, I'll take that first and pass it off. But the Navy has been working for approximately 10 years on something called the Common Control System. And that's exactly what this person described. So the Common Control System is a series of protocols, autonomy protocols that apply subsea, surface, air, and space. And so obviously by doing that, it's adaptable to ground also. So it gives you just protocols that have the backbone to adapt it to specific applications. And additionally, another part of the Navy is doing what they call unmanned autonomy architecture. And that's doing a similar thing that makes you keep your proprietary software, but you're able to plug and play into different autonomy modules as things are upgraded. That is CCS, Common Control System, will be made available commercially, and it will be an enhancement to other protocols that are already there. And just as an aside, David mentioned CIT earlier. I'm also on that advisory board for the unmanned systems. And one of the things that we're considering, at least I put in some comments on, is to enhance the Virginia Community College curriculum to cover things on unmanned systems like Common Control System, like UMMA and other standard protocols, so that we introduce a new generation of potential technicians and engineers in the unmanned arena. So we don't know whether that's going to go, but anyway, he hit a hot button with me, as you could tell.
I like it. I like it. Any of our other panelists want to weigh in?
Yeah, so Kathy, just, Pete, watching the CCS stuff over the years, the only cautionary note that we need to be aware of going into this as an industry is the proprietary data of these CCSs and where they stovepipe across domains. So we've watched the military deal with this for the last 20 years in unmanned systems, and it needs to be open architecture that is not proprietary to do this effectively.
Yeah, Peter, and that's what the UMMA add-on is just for that purpose, because it was always too hard.
Yep.
Great, thank you. The last question I want to ask, and then we will close it out because even our panelists are having to drop off now. Thanks, Dave. Appreciate it. It's just, and the question is a conversation that I've actually had with Dave, so I'm sorry it has to leave. But the question is, the Hampton Roads area, since this event is being hosted by you, seems to be uniquely positioned to really address unmanned systems across these domains because of its geographic characteristics. And I guess I would just ask all of you what you see as sort of unique characteristics that really enable Hampton Roads to leverage its assets to increase the industry presence in Virginia. Anyone want to take that?
Well, I would just say they have, it's been said, but they have a really unique presence of all the different domains that we're talking about in a relatively small geographic region, and assets like, NASA Langley and so many other things going on, a large military presence. There's just so many great things going on in that region. And, it's relatively unique when you look at other places in the United States.
Great. Thanks, Andy. All right, I'm going to now turn it back to Dan Bell to wrap things up. I want to thank our panelists. I think this was really a great event. You all shared some really amazing thoughts on unmanned systems and the reasons why Virginia is so well positioned in this area. Dan, thanks for having me and having all of our panelists here. It was really a great event.
It really, really was, Kathy and Bale. Thank you first and foremost for leading the charge, and to all our participants, Andy and Mike and Peter, and who did I miss? But everybody. It's really a compelling topic. It's great to have the leading experts on this in our region speaking to it, and I hope that it's okay for me to share the video with everybody as well as the presentations, which I thought were wonderful. So again, I tip my hat to all of you. Thank you very much. We did run long, but it was well worth it. So have a great day, everybody. And what did I say, Kathy, last time? See you in the funny papers, right? I think that's what my boss said.
Right. That's exactly right. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
Take care, all. Thank you. Bye-bye.